As the fifth week of the war in Iran draws to a close, one thing is becoming clear. American President Donald Trump wants to get out of Iran, and it seems he wants it fast. This is the clear message that Trump has sent in three different ways. First, according to a high-ranking White House official interviewed by MS Now, President Trump is already growing impatient with the war. According to another official, he's not feeling regretful or anything like that. He just thinks that he wants to move forward already. Another White House official also agreed, telling the outlet that the president has started to shift his personal focus from the conflict to the economy, domestic issues, and the upcoming midterm elections. Second, according to the Wall Street Journal report, Trump told his aides that he is ready to end the campaign in Iran, even though most of the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Under these circumstances, even with the most optimistic outlook, Trump's objectives will only be partially achieved. Even worse, withdrawing without reopening the Strait would be a complete strategic failure, even if attempts are made to shift the blame. In any case, this is a major compromise with a clear objective: to remove Washington from the conflict. And third, Trump himself said this in a recent speech in America, where he told his fellow citizens that only 2 to 3 weeks remain before the war ends. Add to that the support from Washington's allies at a time when Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is telling his people that Iran does not pose an existential threat to them. And the signal is clear. After a month of war, the United States is preparing to leave. So what would their withdrawal look like? And is it possible? But before we begin, if you're new to our channel, make sure to subscribe so you'll always be updated with videos like this. A straight peace deal based on everything mentioned? You might think that a peace agreement between the three warring parties in the Middle East is close at hand. If Donald Trump is really getting impatient with the conflict, the fastest way to end it, aside from a unilateral withdrawal, is a ceasefire. But at present, the signals from all sides show that an agreement is still far off. On Wednesday, Trump posted on his social media platform, Truth Social, that the new president of Iran requested a ceasefire. Theoretically, this gives hope, but Iran does not have a new president yet. It has a new supreme leader, Mustafa Khamenei, who replaced his father Ali. But the president remains Masoud Pezeshkian, and this doesn't seem to be a simple mistake. Mustafa Khamenei is known as a representative of Iran's militarist hardliners. But whoever Trump was referring to, he described the new president as less radical and smarter than his predecessors. In the same post, Trump also showed another contradiction. This is the opposite of what his aides told the press about his position online. Trump insisted that he would only consider a ceasefire once the Strait of Hormuz has been opened. Until that time, Washington will continue attacking Iran until it is gone, or, as they say, brought back to the Stone Ages. Trump emphasized this message in his speech, insisting that the United States will continue to hit Iran hard in the next 2 to 3 weeks. In the meantime, discussions will continue behind the scenes. Then there is Iran's position. According to Reuters, Trump requested a comprehensive ceasefire with multiple guarantees aimed at permanently ending the conflict between the US and Iran, and making it harder to return to war in the future. However, there are other reports. The New York Times reported that many U.S. intelligence agencies said the Iranian government is currently not ready to make a major deal. According to them, Iran believes it is in a strong position and does not need to comply with America's diplomatic demands. This assessment matches what well-known analysts like Danny Citron from the Atlantic Council say about Iran's perspective on the war. Despite all their losses, Iran still believes they hold the advantage. And while Trump is willing to keep the channels open, analysts say Iran does not trust the United States and does not believe Trump is serious about negotiations. It should also be noted that in the past 12 months, Trump has ordered attacks on Iran twice in the middle of negotiations. In public, Iranian officials have rejected Trump's statement that there has been progress between the two sides. A spokesperson for Iran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said on Wednesday that their country did not request a ceasefire, contrary to what Trump claims. And the Strait of Hormuz is still there. President Trump has repeatedly requested that the Strait be fully opened. But until now, Iran firmly refuses. Ibrahim Azizi, head of the National Security Commission of the Iranian parliament and one of the most powerful people in the country, recently wrote on X that the Strait will not be opened. For Trump, instead, it is open to those who comply with the new Iranian law covering the Strait, including paying tolls to Iran. Because of the importance of the Strait to the economy and Iran's ability to control it, the Emirates recently signaled that they are preparing to help the U.S. open the Strait of Hormuz by force. According to the Wall Street Journal, Emirati diplomats encouraged the United States, as well as military powers in Europe and Asia, to form a coalition and intervene. For this, the Emirates is lobbying the United Nations Security Council to issue a resolution allowing the operation, even though it will likely be vetoed by permanent members Russia and China. It's not only the Emirates taking action in the Strait. British Prime Minister Starmer announced that the UK will host a meeting of 35 countries to discuss the reopening of the Strait. The aim of this meeting is to clear the way for broad military cooperation to ensure that the Strait is safe and accessible once the fighting subsides. Meanwhile, Pakistan continues to push for peace. Despite the differing positions of America and Iran, Pakistan is promoting a 5-point proposal for peace, hoping to leverage its relationship with both countries and gain some diplomatic influence. China also supports the 5-point proposal, a new development after the foreign minister of Pakistan visited Beijing last Tuesday. The proposal suggests an immediate halt to all fighting and the start of peace talks as soon as possible. All attacks on civilians and non-military targets will stop immediately. Safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz and other vital waterways will be ensured, and any long-term peace agreement will be based on international law. But it seems that all of this is too optimistic. On the battlefield, the situation just keeps getting worse. On Friday, March the 27th, Israel expanded the scope of their attacks on Iran's economic targets by hitting the two largest steel factories in Iran, in Avas and Isfahan. Israeli security sources told Reuters that the targeted facilities, which are partly owned by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, are expected to cause billions of dollars in damage to Iran's economy and paralyze the country's steel industry. Argus Media, an organization focused on global energy and commodities markets, reported that the attacks damaged the storage facilities and power infrastructure of Kurdistan Steel and Mubarak Air, and are expected to reduce production and export capacity. Iran has one of the largest steel industries in the world, and, according to experts, approximately 14% of the country's non-oil and natural gas exports come from steel. An analyst told the Jerusalem Post that the attack on the steel industry is part of a broader U.S.-Israel strategy to reduce Iran's foreign currency reserves to almost zero. According to them, these sectors are the ones that slowed down. They are the source of the country's foreign currency income. The stoppage of these vital economic arteries aims to trigger the collapse of Iran's economy, a possibility that could happen soon due to the country's weakness. This is important because some analysts have previously accused the U.S. of putting money in Iran's pocket by allowing the sale of Iranian oil on the international market after oil prices soared due to the war. After the attack on the steel factories, Iran quickly threatened full-scale retaliation. The country promised to hit 6 steel plants in Israel and the Gulf states, which would be a major shock to global markets. However, at the time of writing, Iran has not yet targeted these facilities. On March 31, Iranian media reported that the Mubarak steel complex was hit again in the attacks. On the same day as the attack on the steel plants, a missile and drone attack on Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia injured at least 15 American soldiers, 5 of whom are in serious condition. Several U.S. refueling aircraft were also damaged, and satellite imagery shows damage to the apron used by U.S. aircraft and a heat signature consistent with fire. More importantly, a highly valuable E-3 Sentry, an early warning and control plane of which the U.S. only has a few in service, was destroyed. Let's move away from Iran and take a look at the Houthis. It's been more than a week since they announced to the world that they would join the fight, and up to now, their influence is still limited. So far, the Houthis have launched 3 small waves of attacks. Each one targeted Israel, including a joint attack with Hezbollah. In a televised statement, the Houthi spokesperson, Asari, announced that they had successfully achieved their objective. However, the Israeli military insisted that the Houthis have not yet hit their target. At present, it seems that the Houthis are avoiding attacking a closer target in their own area, the Bab al-Mandab Strait, a critical waterway that they could close to cut off access to the Red Sea, similar to what Iran did in the Strait of Hormuz to cut off access. But instead of directly attacking Bab al-Mandab, it seems the Houthis are focused on making noise to remind the world that they are still there, still dangerous, and ready to join the fight. In Iraq, a drone strike on March 28 targeted the house of Van Barzani, president of Iraqi Kurdistan. A local official told the Associated Press that there was only property damage and no casualties. This attack is significant for 2 reasons, but most importantly because of the person who was targeted. Aside from attacking each other's leadership, Israel and Iran avoid targeting prominent figures in the Middle East. Even when Iran tries to punish the Gulf states by attacking their infrastructure, they avoid targeting prominent leaders. So, focusing on a high-profile leader, even a regional figure like Barzani, is a major escalation. Barzani is a very important Kurdish official. He is the grandson of the founder of the Kurdistan Democratic Party and is well known among both Kurds and the minority groups living in the Iraqi Kurdish territory. If the attack had been successful, the Kurdish forces would have immediately withdrawn, but it is unclear who their target was. And here comes the second reason why we emphasize this story. No one claimed responsibility for the attack. Iran's Revolutionary Guard issued a statement calling the drone attack a terrorist act. According to the semi-official Iranian news agency, Mehr News, despite the statement, most accusations point to Iran or Iran-backed militias, based on their previous attacks in Iraqi Kurdistan. In response, Washington did not mince words. It released a statement directly accusing Iran's proxies of carrying out the attack. Barzani was not the only Kurdistan leader targeted. Security sources told Reuters that air defenses shot down a drone near the residence of the Iraqi Kurdish ruling party leader Masoud Barzani. Masoud Barzani is the former president of Kurdistan and the uncle of Chavan. Finally, we also need to talk about an attack that, at the time of writing, has not yet happened. But every day, it becomes more likely. On April 1, The Atlantic reported that military officials are planning for 2 possible ground assaults in Iran. One on Karg Island, the center of the country's energy industry, and another to seize enriched uranium and weaken Iran's nuclear development program. All they're waiting for now is President Trump's approval. Sending troops into Iranian territory is one of the most dangerous missions that could be carried out in their time. As mentioned in previous videos, capturing Karg Island would require U.S. troops to be exposed to Iranian missiles and drones for an extended period. And holding the island would require a prolonged U.S. presence on Iranian soil. The mission to obtain the nuclear material is just as dangerous. U.S. forces would need to operate deep inside Iranian territory, possibly under fire from missiles and drones, while specialized teams search through the rubble to find the material. Despite the danger, the reward is not guaranteed. The Atlantic mentioned that neither of the 2 operations would definitely end the war within a few weeks, as Trump promised. It also does not guarantee the collapse of the regime or the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. The precarious rise of J.D. Vance. And finally, we need to pay attention to U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. As war approaches, Vance is one of the most skeptical voices in the White House. Axios reported that he questioned the duration of the war, its objectives, and the possible impact on U.S. munition stockpiles. It seems that Trump indicated that Vance may have maintained that position in private discussions about Iran, and he told reporters that, philosophically, Vance was somewhat different from Trump's position at the start of the conflict. When it became clear that President Trump decided to go to war with Iran, Vance followed and advocated the use of overwhelming military force to quickly end the conflict. But despite his quick compliance, he was sidelined in favor of more hawkish figures like Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who appeared more frequently in the media to defend the war and its objectives. But the situation quickly changed when negotiations shifted in hopes of finding an off-ramp. As part of the discussions, Iran showed that they did not want to negotiate again with U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, Trump's brother-in-law, because they led the talks when the war broke out. A Gulf source told The Telegraph that they didn't want to work with Jared and Witkoff because they stabbed them in the back. Although the Iranians prefer Vance, it's clear that America's VP won't be a pushover. Sources told CNN that Vance sent a strong message to Iran, one of their infrastructures, because President Trump is getting impatient to find an agreement. Vance is also tough on Israel. According to Axios, he criticized Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in a Monday phone call for overstating the possibility that the U.S.-Israeli bombing campaign in Iran could overthrow its regime. France and Jerusalem have had a long-standing tense relationship, and the VP's advisors believe that there are some in Israel who are trying to undermine him because they are not convinced that he is hawkish enough on Iran, a claim that Israeli officials deny. Despite these challenges, Vance's selection to lead the negotiations has given him a more public role in a war where he usually sits in the background. Trump made Vance's role official in a cabinet meeting on the third day, asking the VP to give an update about Iran and mentioning that he is working with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner on the negotiations. But this higher-profile role exposes Vance to greater political risk. At a White House Easter lunch, President Trump said that if J.D. Vance fails to reach a deal, he will be the one to blame. And if there is an agreement, he will take all the credit. Although this could be seen as a joke, President Trump has a long history of claiming the successes of others and openly distancing himself from anything he considers a failure. For J.D. Vance, the war with Iran could make or break his political future. Thank you very much for watching.